Occasionally, a headline comes up while you're scrolling through news that's so memeable that you just have a hard time believing that it's true. Generally, you see these headlines from fringe sites and they never seem to go any further, but this gem from Elizabeth Warren definitely walked the line between believable and not. Now, I will admit that I first saw this headline and I thought it was something from a conspiracy theory website that was meant to generate outrage and tip the scales of the election that's upcoming one way or the other. But the first headline that I saw came from Star Political, and a Google search that I did immediately afterwards only showed other smaller sources and fringe conspiracy websites. So I had to vet this story before I could actually figure out whether or not it was true. According to Star Political and a handful of other websites, though, Warren has come out in support of what she is calling gay reparations. Now, I knew this wasn't going to be what it was made out to be initially. These headlines are generated to be infuriating, and they're made to draw a specific reaction. And paying people just to be gay is too far by any metric, no matter how far left you're going. As the story matured and more sources came out, I was able to follow this article up with an article from the Daily Wire. And according to Amanda Prestigiacomo, last Thursday, Senator Warren endorsed what she called the Refund Equality Act. Now, this is a reintroduction of a 2017 bill to allow same-sex couples to amend their tax returns from before same-sex marriage was recognized federally and when it was only recognized from state to state. According to both articles, and among some others that I read, the federal government supposedly owes these couples $50 to $67 million based on a former discriminatory tax code. The sources that I found on this story mainly focused on who was going to be affected, and there weren't really any details as to how it was going to be rolled out. It's unclear whether this would be a forced action by a Warren executive branch against the IRS, or if this would become a voluntary option for couples to go back to their tax provider, or possibly directly to the federal government, and file a petition to amend their taxes for previous years. The act cited the fact that the tax code from before was highly discriminatory. The most likely way that I could see this rolled out effectively would be for states that officially recognized same-sex marriage long before the federal government did to provide a document for these couples to take back to the federal IRS in order to amend their tax returns. That way all of the documentation is taken care of. But unfortunately, this disproportionately favors voters in Massachusetts and California, voters who would likely already be voting for Democrats as it was. And it discriminates against voters in smaller and more rural states that did not recognize same-sex marriage until the federal government came down and told them that they had to. Of course, then, the question becomes, how do we level the playing field across all 50 states for same-sex couples? Could a couple in Kansas that did not officially recognize same-sex marriage get affidavits from their neighbors and witness statements saying that these couples lived together outside of marriage and could then amend their tax returns all the way back to the same year that Massachusetts introduced gay marriage as the first state to do so? And of course, like any other government benefit or program, we then have to look at how this is going to be abused and how we could possibly prevent the abuse. It's easy to see that this is being talked about now because the topic of slavery reparations is one that has dominated this election cycle, especially when we talk about the president. This is a way to bring relevance to yet another underclass, and this is an underclass that has been completely offset almost by the trans movement that popped up over the last couple years. Now, taxation is theft, and people should be doing everything that they possibly can to pay less taxes, especially when it's going to the federal government. But Warren continually ostracizes a tax cut that only benefits one demographic. In her case, or at least in her talking point, that would be the ultra wealthy, the upper 1%, and the super rich.
The rich and powerful run Washington. They write the rules of our economy and our government to benefit themselves.
Is we're going to build right into the administration of this tax that it has a very high rate of monitoring, of auditing the rich people on the ultra millionaire tax. So we're going to be out there counting them and watching them. And that's great. But here's the deal. They made $1 bazillion. And now the question is, do they have to pay a little portion of that to make sure that we're reinvesting so the next kid gets a chance and the next kid gets a chance and the next kid gets a chance?
But in the same breath, she is coming forward and introducing a rebate that will only benefit one specific demographic, leaving all of the rest of us out in the cold. What do you think about Elizabeth Warren's new proposal, and what do you think about the idea of demographic benefits in general? I always welcome a thoughtful and positive discussion in the comment section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at Ed's Blog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Thanks as always for listening to this show and supporting this channel. And remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care.